Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Zendrop's podcast, 9 to Never. The podcast all about entrepreneurship, e-commerce, quitting your 9 to 5, and creating the career of your dreams online. My name is Kennedy Meek, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Zendrop and also the host of this podcast. And today's guest is chock full of so much valuable information. I'm so excited to introduce you to her, Madeline Mann. As the director of human resources at a technology company, she worked with hiring all types of managers, sifted through hundreds of applications a week, and was passionate about the fact that it was her job to make sure that they hired the best match for their team. Seeing that high volume of resumes and hearing the feedback from every single interview and application, some very clear trends emerged. So Madeline went on to create Self-Made Millennial, a resource all about creating the best version of yourself for any type of career you want to enter into, whether that is the corporate world or entrepreneurship. So in today's episode, we discuss all things from appropriate scaling strategies when it comes to hiring individuals, side hustles, managing expectations in terms of the sunken cost theory, and overall how to build an online business that best suits your needs, desires, and passions. Madeline's insight is so incredibly valuable, and she has helped hundreds of thousands of individuals, both on social media and through her courses and programs, to be able to get them to the career of their dreams, and she can help you too. So I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this episode and get all of the valuable information you possibly can from Madeline Mann. Madeline, thank you so much for hopping on this podcast with me. I love the fact that we're able to connect online even though we're not in the same state. I think that's so awesome. And I would really love for you to just start by introducing yourself. Tell our audience who you are, how you got started. I know a lot about you because I follow you on TikTok, but I'd love for our audience to get to know you more as well.
I'm the creator of Self-Made Millennial. So folks may have seen me on TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I've also been on New York Times, Bloomberg, Harvard Business Review. And what I do is I've taken all of my insights and expertise from being an insider as a human resources executive, understanding exactly what's going on behind the scenes, who's getting promoted, who's getting hired, whose resume is constantly falling to the bottom of the pile. And I took all those insights and I thought, wow, if only people knew the things I see, they would make much better decisions in their career. So I first kicked off with my YouTube channel, Self-Made Millennial, and it's just really grown from there to tens of thousands of success stories. And I also have lots of job search programs that help people to, and also help them with their LinkedIn branding and just bring out their personal brand and make an impact in their career.
Amazing. So, how did you decide to transition from the corporate world into developing this own business for yourself?
It was a moment of feeling like I needed to help people. I was going through all of these resumes, and the same things kept coming up again and again of why people weren't landing these interviews. And so I decided to respond individually to those resumes. And that ended up being a complete disaster. People did not want not only a rejection telling them you're not getting the role, but also a critique. I thought it was constructive, but I think a lot of people, when it's not asked for, it's not appreciated. And so I thought, okay, I need to find a different way to help people. So I started my YouTube channel, and honestly, Kennedy, it was just a side thing that was fun. It wasn't anything more than that. And what it grew into was a business, a calling, and a way that I've been able to impact millions of people.
That's incredible. That's so amazing. And I think that, with the rising popularity of social media as a way to not only connect people through the times of, a pandemic or really just in general, but also during a period of time where because of the pandemic, so many people had to shift away from the traditional corporate life. Unfortunately, there was a lot of layoffs and shifts in job responsibilities and things like that. You came in a very opportune time to start affecting these young individuals who might have lost their job opportunities at the beginning of the pandemic and have had to adapt throughout this entire year, which has been a really interesting process to watch. And so, how have you seen young adults really changing the way that their professional careers are going due to this massive change in society as a whole?
One thing that is a bit of a unlock for
Mm-hmm.
young adults I've seen is realizing no one needs to give you a job in order for you to get experience, get money, get really great knowledge, any of that. What we can do now is we can say, I want to be a graphic designer. You get scrappy with it. You meet graphic designers. You learn these different skill sets. And then you might go to a company, either maybe it's just your friend's company who has an Etsy store, and you said, "Hey, your logo, your graphic design, could I revamp that for you?" And then be able to build that experience on your own. I think there's this the traditional model of we need to apply to role, get a role, they pay us, that equals experience. But these days, the floodgates are open. We can create experience anywhere, anytime, as long as you take the initiative. It is easier psychologically and it feels safer to simply apply and get the job because it just feels like that path is more deeply charted. But if we're willing to pave our own path, the results are pretty phenomenal.
No, that's such a good point to touch on. And I think something that listeners need to remember when we're entering into this entrepreneurial phase of society is that it's it's not necessarily the easiest route. We work with dropshippers every single day who struggle with this concept of the sunken cost theory and the fact that it takes a lot of work up front to become successful, versus a normal corporate job where, yeah, you graduate college, you send your resume in. If your resume is good enough and they like you in an interview, you have the job. But this concept of entrepreneurial mindset and endeavors gives you this level of freedom that, comes at a cost in terms of stamina and a lot of hard work. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget. Do you see that a lot when it comes to like coaching these younger adults, specifically on social media, that they're kind of forgetting that? Or how do you teach these young adults to really combat that mentality?
I think there is this idea that I want to be my own boss, as if
Hmm.
that
Totally.
is the end goal, which I don't think it is. I think having a boss can actually be amazing. They can be your greatest mentor. They can help you get to the next level. I think being the right type of boss for yourself is a great goal. But when I think about, you're right. Like if you are an entrepreneur and you're maybe going about it in a way that is really stressful, or you feel like you're in over your head, you're often working far more hours than you would have if you had a demanding boss, or even just a normal boss. And so I think it's really about
Easily.
understanding what is that right next path. And it's all about, I always talk about informational interviews. So instead of you trying to invent what is this going to look like for me, what is this life going to look like, if you want to be a social media manager, you better tell me that you've talked to several dozen social media managers before you even dip your toe into that entrepreneurial path or even internal path, because that will give you an idea of where you're going. Because I think people dive in too deep, they get exhausted, when really possibly it could have been a better path to go into a company, get that mentorship, get that training, and then exit in a way that feels more graceful. Though some people, they can go straight in and it works out really well. But all I'm saying is make sure that you are using your resources and your network.
Totally fair. I definitely agree with that. And so I'd love to parallel that to the typical user that we have here at Zendrop, which are a lot of young adults who really want to emerge into this new way of e-commerce in order to not have a boss and to create their own schedule and develop a career that's incredibly fruitful both financially and personally. And so for these new dropshippers who are coming in and might not be very familiar with the business model or really what to do in general, how would you recommend these entrepreneurs whose end goal might eventually be not to have a boss, but how do you recommend that they enter into the space and really get a lot of, I guess, hands-on work in the industry before really setting off on their own? Because I think that's important.
I think that I think we're all very compelled to, we have access to so much information online. I do think it's important to invest in yourself. Several $100s, even several $1,000s into a program where you're with like-minded people, where you are taking, really great classes. That to me has been such a life hack as far as my ability to scale my business very quickly, is because I pull out my wallet and I say, I'm going to invest in this coaching. I'm going to make this happen. And the great thing about that is that there's a direct ROI. There's the return on investment where, in other things in your business, it might seem like a sunk cost, but this is really something where you always see these returns if you're investing in yourself. And so I would say that, and also really taking into account what is kind of the larger plan. What infrastructure do you need to create to make this happen? And it's also really nice if you often make a bit more of logical decisions if you have something else going on. So that's why I love the idea of a side hustle to dip your toe into a new realm, because then you might have a day job or you might have a different type of work where you feel it's very stable. And then you can experiment a little bit more, understand things a little bit more before you're maybe making rash decisions due to financial strains.
I totally agree with that. I think that's an incredible way to really enter into a new space. And on that note, let's talk about side hustles for a second, because I think that we get really confused with what a side hustle means. You hear all of these entrepreneurs with podcasts and YouTube channels saying that, I worked my 9 to 5 and then I was up till 2 a.m. doing my side hustle every single night, working like a dog, so on and so forth. But I really don't think that's the case. You can actually have a side hustle that's pretty contributing to a normal real life. So what are some examples of some great side hustles that young adults, whether they're in college or not in college, can really enter into and receive that return on investment pretty quickly?
I've seen so many cool side hustles. It could be that you're a tutor. You can tutor others. I've seen one woman I know, she works as a software engineer and she really wanted to get this creative side. And so she writes YouTube scripts. Or you could also, I've also hired someone who their side hustle is telling people like me how to dress. Here's what to buy online, go, and then I put down my own credit card and I go buy it. There's so many cool, we all have these amazing skills. Or a remote interior designer. You might be, all day working as a bank teller, but maybe by night you are giving people advice on their homes. There's so many different things. And what I love about this is our day jobs do not need to fulfill us in every way. And what I've found, and this happened in my life as well, when you have these other side hustles that have these complementary skills, you get more satisfied in your day job because you're not requiring that it provide you fulfillment in every area of your life.
I totally agree with that. On a personal note, before I was working with Zendrop, I owned a social media marketing agency myself. And I loved it because marketing and social media and the concept of getting a message out there to a larger audience, I'm so attracted to. And it really drives me so much so. However, what I was doing is I was actively immersing myself in brands that had to do with my outside interests, such as fitness and wellness and beauty and whatnot. And as fun as it was to use my own personal experience to be able to help these brands, my personal interests now became my job, and they no longer became something that I wanted to do as an outlet from my career. And now working at Zendrop, I absolutely love my job and I love the creative freedom it gives me and the team that I work with, but my personal interests are still separate. And it makes my personal life so much more fulfilling so that I'm actively more mentally focused and present during my job every single day.
I think that is a really important message for people to hear, because we're often told follow your passion. If you
Totally.
stuck to that very strict definition, you would be working in wellness right now, most likely.
Totally.
And
Totally.
that doesn't necessarily, I don't know that you would actually be happier, exactly as you stated, because it's not just the industry, it is the values of the company. What strengths do you play to every day? And also, what's the market demand? Do you see your career, if you're someone who's achievement oriented, do you see your career scaling in this company? There's just so many different aspects. And so I think what people get too focused on is the industry. And what I love is that you can just follow that industry. You can do cool things in that industry in a side hustle. For me, I thought I was going to be a broadcast journalist, which once I looked at how it's not really a team oriented career, how it is very deadline driven, how the earning potential and the ability to scale my career was limited, all of those things, I realized, okay, that's not the best thing for me. But guess what I'm doing right now? I'm on a podcast. I'm doing YouTube videos constantly. Like, I'm doing broadcast journalism in my own way. So you can absolutely create these
Of course.
experiences in other aspects of your life.
Totally. And I think that's a really important message to consciously remember for new dropshippers or e-commerce store owners or people who really just work online in general. If you want to develop a e-commerce career online, it doesn't have to be within the industry niche that you're familiar with. You know, if you're a huge video game connoisseur, you don't have to sell gaming things. If you know, pet products, or if you're obsessed with your dog, like, you don't have to sell pet products. Just because you know about it right now doesn't mean you have to make it your career. There's so much space to be able to learn further in our careers, specifically as young adults or millennials, right? And so we don't have to utilize our passions to drive our career forward. In fact, it's probably better if we don't, because if we, you know, our interests personally change all the time. And so the minute we might lose interest in something we do in our personal time, how is that going to affect our career in the long term?
And what makes the passion show up? Because I think people might go, oh, but I'm not passionate about hardware pieces for my, smart microwave. No, but what's really interesting is attraction to mastery. So is this
Mhm.
something that I feel I could master? And studies show that the feeling of playing to your strengths and then mastering a task, that is actually what leads to enduring passion. And so if you could see yourself on this drop shipping path and really mastering this certain industry or this certain business, that can be a really great clue that this is going to be a great business for you.
And what I would love to touch on next, because you talk a lot about on your platforms about best ways to make yourself noticeable in, you know, a hiring catalog or through your resume or, you know, anything of the sort. And typically, you know, if you are an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, you know, your goal isn't to be hired by someone, it's probably to hire people, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd love to touch on is, you know, as businesses start to scale, as your online business might start to scale and you're realizing you need to be hiring people or expanding your team in some way, shape, or form, how do you recommend young entrepreneurs go about that? I know personally it's pretty scary to think, oh no, now I have to delegate to someone. That's such a weird thought. And so, how do you recommend these young entrepreneurs who are gaining a level of success go about building a team that's going to benefit their company in the long term?
I think one thing that is really easy to fall into when you're getting those first few hires is to kind of just give them task that you're just kind of handing off. And that's kind of what we're taught to. We get like a virtual assistant and it's just task oriented. But what is so crucial is that onboarding phase. So bringing these new hires in, giving them every insight about the business, helping them to own projects, because ultimately the reason why someone joins a smaller growing company is because they want all of that exposure. So there's an element of the people who you hire might not be productive their first week because you're so focused on what is the vision, what is the mission, what are the values, what do we want to get out of this. And trust me, if you invest that upfront effort, it will pay off in the long run because those people will be ride or die, really into the business. And that's really ultimately why they chose you over maybe going to a larger corporation.
Totally. So when do you think what are the signs that it's the right time to start expanding your team?
I think that once you definitely want to look at what are you filling your days with? What are the tasks that you're doing? And look at the tasks and say, is this revenue generating? And if you're doing a lot of things like, responding to these random emails or editing a thumbnail for this or that, yes, those things are important, but are they revenue generating? I don't think so. So really looking at that, and if you start to see, wow, there's all of this like low hanging fruit, there's all these things I could be doing, but I'm doing all of these other things. Um, it's time to hire. It's time to get other people because I know I'm a DIYer. I do it myself. I always think I can do it best, or I can do it. I can make it less expensive, but we often forget how expensive our time is, and so we need to then move that off to other people.
Now, one last question on the topic of scaling, because I think this is a huge debate amongst the e-commerce space. Do we hire in-house or do we hire agencies? Where's your feelings on this?
This is really tough because agencies are so attractive at times. It's like it's a one-stop shop. It's like they pop up and they help you A to Z. Now, I do think that uh such as like I have an outsource finance and accounting firm that helps me, which has worked out fantastic, and I've worked with them for years. But I think especially like for my marketing function, I ended up hiring internal because it's just so much the heart and the soul of the business. It's the voice. And the problem is, and I asked this to other, 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs who I talked to the other day. I was speaking with them on this exact topic, and they said, I get burned all the time, or I've seen people get burned all the time through going through agencies in the beginning. They said that later on, once you're more established, once you have employees who can really manage that relationship and you're not the one managing that relationship, it can go really well. But focus on bringing in your core team, leveling them up, building up to be executives someday, leaders in your business, and then moving into more of the agency realm.
I would definitely agree with that. I think that there is many portions of a business that can be automated and do not require such personal attention. Like you just said, finance and taxation and everything that has to do with the money side of the business. When you are growing and if finance isn't your background, it's probably best that you hire an agency because they have a very one-stop shop way of doing it. But if you're really focusing on the front face of the company or the vision of the company or how you're going to scale and grow your business in a way that is very personal to you, you need someone hands-on that cares about your brand image just as much as you do and cares about your customer base just as much as you do. And I'm not knocking agencies. I've used agencies in the past before too, specifically for paid advertising or something of the sort. But you're right. I was very bogged down by the concept of having to constantly check them and make sure they're doing what my vision is versus, if you front a little bit more cash for a salary for an employee, even if it's part-time, now you have someone who's in direct benefit of the company's image because the better the company does, the better they do. So that's a
Yes.
really good point.
Yes. And it took me a while to get to the point where I was accepting of, all right, I should buy the person's entire time, like go have them be full time. It took me a while to get to that point because you have someone they have a bunch of clients and they're working on you, and that's fine. But what's interesting is that once that person who is helping you, when they get more clients, that means less attention to you. And so it's kind of like you're rooting for them for their success, but also their success is actually detrimental to you. So to have someone, when you can have someone 30 to 40 hours a week focused on your business, you will see this level of commitment, this focus, this ability to move quite a bit faster that you didn't see before. So it's a very scary leap. It was scary for me, but I did see a difference.
So who was the first person you hired for your business?
It was marketing. Well, so that was like my
Okay.
first full time was marketing. But I also had
Okay.
like a virtual assistant from very early days.
So this is another, I think, really important point to touch on is that a lot of times we're not just hiring because we need more help. We're hiring because we need a level of expertise that we might not have. And, for example, if you're in the e-commerce space and branding and marketing and organic social media is your bread and butter and you're really good at it, but you're not really good at email automation or paid advertising, you need to be hiring someone whose exact expertise is that part of the business. How do you go about finding qualities of an expert such as this if you know nothing about the industry and it's a new hire for you? Like, where do you get that research to know you're hiring the right person? Because I've heard a lot of stories about budding entrepreneurs getting burned by 6 or 7 employees in a row because they don't know what they're looking for.
That's so true. And what I've done is I've joined coaching programs where I'm the person being coached. I am around, these highly successful entrepreneurs, learning from them. And also I do learn the jobs of the people who I hire, not to the extent that they know it by any means, but I do believe that to be able to hire in an informed way, to be able to delegate properly, and to have intelligent conversations with them, there is an element of meeting them where they are and understanding the context of their work. Of course, they are much better at it than me, and that is I'll always be delegating to them for it, but I think it really is worth it to invest in yourself, invest in a business accelerator or whatnot, and take the time to get familiar with what you're asking them to do, instead of being like, no, just go off, do it. And it can be really very, very often get burned.
And I think that's why I think agencies are so attractive, right? Because, and this is why this whole debate happens, is because they do that for you. You say, I don't know how to do this. Please do it. And they're like, we got it. We'll handle it for you. You never have to learn the business. You never have to learn that portion of your business. You, according to, probably the marketing agency or whatever agency's pitch is, hey, you don't have to learn it. We got you. And that's probably also why a lot of people get burned by agencies too, because they're not knowing what to look for in each of the different positions they need to hire for a scaling business.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it really does sound like the perfect thing. But yeah, I think once you have your team, you understand the different parts of the business, then yeah, maybe that agency will come in and just throw gasoline on the fire and you can soar. But exactly, that context is everything for you as a leader.
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I'm sure that as an entrepreneur yourself and someone who's worked in multiple corporate settings, you've heard about the sunken cost theory, correct? And, in the dropshipping space and e-commerce, or really online business in general, when you're a budding business, this is such a detriment to, I think, new business owners. This concept, and, for e-commerce specifically, you have to test so many products until you hit your one winner, right? The one thing that takes your store to the next level. How do you go about combating the sunken cost theory? And when do you think it is the right time in terms of failure to move on from something that's not working for your business?
I believe that the phrase never give up is incorrect. Sometimes we should give up. Sometimes we should say, this is not working. I need to allocate my time elsewhere. And I think that's okay as long as you're doing it from a place of being informed. What you really want to ask yourself is, if I was to make this decision again today, would I make the same decision? Would I be in this right now? And if the answer is no, then that's a very good indication that you should do your best to unwind it and maybe move into something else a bit more profitable. I mean, I saw this over and over again during the coronavirus pandemic, in that companies were just straight up cut off at the knees. I had a friend, he runs the bicycle trolleys that go around in music festivals where they ride people into the music festival. Of course, his business was completely just evaporated overnight.
Right.
And so he transformed the shipping containers into disinfectant places for doctors' equipment, and he just completely revamped it. And so instead of just having like this sunken cost, I just need to have these bicycles doing something, he said, no, I have shipping containers, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to make it happen. And so I think that there's that's something I really admire in entrepreneurs who are able to say, this wasn't right, let's move, like let's keep, let's find a different path that we can take.
So how do you recommend, if e-commerce or online entrepreneurship is your end goal, you're confident in that, you know that this is what you want to be doing, but what you're doing right now isn't working, right? How do we pivot while still consciously staying with our eye on the prize?
One thing that I say, and I say this both for the job search and for entrepreneurs, is that we are often sitting in the bottle and we can't read the label. We are so close to our own story, our own dynamics. We're emotionally caught up that we cannot see what it is that we need to change to move forward. And I personally, like, even when I was on the job search and me as now as an entrepreneur, I've always had a coach. I've always had someone who despite me knowing exactly what other people need to do, I know I'm too close to my own story. And so we really need to not be building in silence or in a silo. We need to be getting feedback and from the right people. This is the thing, is that friends and family are not good for, your business unless they're a 7 or 8 figure
Absolutely not.
entrepreneur. I would just say skip it and like go to someone who's actually done where what you want to do. Never listen to anyone who hasn't done what you want to do. And so I think really finding those people, getting in those circles, investing in those types of coaches, that has been pivotal to me.
So for, we have a lot of listeners who are definitely younger and probably working with a huge budget in terms of trying to build this new company for themselves. And coaches obviously cost money. So how do you recommend these people find these mentors who would be willing to work with them for no cost at all, and also, it's a mutually beneficial relationship?
Yeah, if you're trying to go for no cost, I would say um, you really want to show show them that you know them. That's something my friend Austin Belsack says. Like, show them that you know them. If I was to come to you, Kennedy, and really want your mentorship, I would listen to every single one of these podcast episodes. I would study your social media management business and what you did there. I would really just understand you as a person. I would understand what you like to do in your personal time, as long as it's not too stalkerish of me to, dig too far. I would really, and I would come to you and I would really state very clearly kind of the things I admire about you. And I would just ask if you would be open to like just hopping on the phone and going for a walk with me one day and just chatting about all kinds of stuff. And that's the thing, is like, you never ask for a mentor, you build a relationship. And that's like a weird uh
Mhm.
like aspect that people often don't think. They think like I would walk up to you and go, Kennedy, will you be my mentor? And you'd be like, I don't know you. Okay. What? This doesn't make any sense. But it's really all about building meaningful relationships, understanding that person, being their fan. I would also, I think praising people in public, supporting them. I would be reposting your podcasts, saying like including key quotes that I really liked of yours. And you would notice that. You'd be like, wow, Madeline really cares about what I do. And then it would probably be fun for us to get on a phone call, because you would be energized, be like, wow, this person's supporting me. She gets what I do. She really, like, I could see this being a really fruitful relationship. And so that's the way you want to approach it.
I guess this would also be a really great way to introduce a side hustle as part of your end goal in business endeavors, because I think one of the best ways that I have learned how to work within, my job roles is by learning from my employers. Quite honestly, we're talking here about wanting to be an entrepreneur, and I think that's everyone's goal, but at the same time, if you don't know what you're trying to be an entrepreneur for, everything you're doing is not going to be as productive. And so this would probably also be a great opportunity to ask one of these individuals in the industry that you want to work in if you could provide some level of work for them. And then you have a direct, relationship with this person, and an actively working relationship where you can see firsthand where their success came from.
Yes, I think that's exceptional. And what I typically do for that is I would, for continue the example, you and I would have hopped on a phone and I would say, Kennedy, what are you up to these days? And you might say, well, we launched this podcast. Right now I'm focused on getting lots of great guests and getting the podcast out to as many people as possible. Right there, I now know what I'm going to tell you I'm going to do for you. And here's the thing. If I said, let's just say I wrote you a message one day, Kennedy, we don't know each other. And I said, Kennedy, if you need anything from me, let me know. Just let me know. I guarantee you would never ask me for anything. But if I said, Kennedy, I have a list of 5 people who, here's like their pedigree and here's what they do and here's why I think they'd be great for your podcast. And I've also arranged for like these 3 people in the e-commerce space to post about your podcast next week when it goes live. Like that is like, and then I said, how else can I help you with promoting this? You might say, well, I need a Twitter strategy or whatnot. Like maybe there would be something there, but you really want to make sure that you're asking questions, you're listening to people, and then telling them how you can help them. And in my example, I already had like, here's how I'm going to help you, but it might be more of like, hey, I want to help you promote this podcast. I do have skills. I'm an expert in LinkedIn promotion. Like, can I help you with that? You might say, absolutely. So make sure that we are meeting people where they are and not having them do the hard work of figuring out how the heck we are going to work with them. Give them those ideas.
And I think that's a really good quality to keep in mind if we're going back to when we're scaling our businesses, how to hire people. If we really want someone who's going to be passionate about our business, whether we're trying to apply for a side hustle, get a mentor, or hire for our own business, we need people who are going to be proactive in terms of being immersed in what we do, because we need to be able to trust both ways.
Yeah, I have a whole course on LinkedIn Learning. So, LinkedIn has that whole learning platform. I have a
Mhm.
course that I teach on there called How to Follow Up on a Job Application. The title seems so innocuous, but really it's like an 8-part course on how to be persistent. Because what people
Mm.
often think is me following up after job application, me following up after I got rejected, me following up after an interview, or after they said that they were doing a hiring freeze. All of those things sounds like I'm going to be annoying. It's not annoying. It is showing what you are going to be like when you're an employee. You're going to be passionate. You're going to be persistent. You're not going to wait until someone tells you to do something. You're going to think of solutions and also continue the communication and show your interest. So I completely agree. It's really all about that persistence, and it shows a bit about your character.
So we're talking a lot about the entrepreneurial mindset and how, the pandemic has changed the way millennials and Gen Z view career. But what do you think is going to be the trend going forward in terms of how young adults enter the workspace?
I have seen a lot of people I know, they have sons, daughters that are 12 to 14 years old. And these folks are already like in these online communities, building skills, designing websites, or creating their own bracelets to sell in Facebook Marketplace or whatever it is, because the internet is now so incredibly accessible, and there are opportunities and such low barriers to entry to become someone who is actually making a profit off of the internet. And also, I think Gen Z, the number one job that they wanted, this was several years ago when they were a bit younger, was to be a YouTuber, which is to me like that no other generation has ever said that. Like, I never even thought of that as like
No.
a real career. And so what that's saying to me in all this is that we're moving into a phase where it's not about getting a job per se, but it's about how do I create value. And there's just the online has just given so many different avenues on how to create value that I think that it's going to be more value oriented versus necessarily uh, having to have something that's a bit more traditional. Though I don't think traditional employment is necessarily going away, or is a bad thing. But I think getting that experience earlier will just happen more authentically due to the access to all these different ways to be an entrepreneur.
Definitely. I 100% agree. And I really like the way that we're shifting our focus from the traditional corporate life. There's so many studies that indicate that traditional corporate life is so horrible for not only your mental and physical health, but, it stunts your creative skill sets and, desire to improve in your career in so many different ways. And so I'm really loving the fact that these younger generations are trying to change that consciously. They're trying to say, we know that certain jobs require 9 to 5 type work, environments. And we know that certain types of jobs are not going away. The way a doctor works is probably not going to change anytime soon or something of the sort. But we're actively trying to combat that traditional way of corporate life and to allow working to feel like something that's tangible and manageable with a personal life going forward. And I think that's why so many people are transitioning into this entrepreneurial mindset, because they want exactly that. They want the ability to balance work and personal life on their own time.
Yeah, and balance just, yeah, the way our lives are, the way my energy after 2 p.m., like from 2 to 4 p.m., just kind of dips suddenly. and
Mhm.
and so do you really want to pay me during that time when maybe I'm not being as productive? I think it's really exciting to see the way things are moving. With all the terrible things that came with this pandemic, the one of the bright sides is this shift towards remote work. I remember when bringing on my marketing hire, it never even, she wanted to set her own hours, and it just never even occurred to me that that would ever be an issue. Like, I never even thought that she would sit there from 9 to 5 and work on things. Like, yeah, work on a little bit in the morning
Mhm.
if you want to. Then, go to the beach with your husband and your dog, and then, yeah, hop on it in the evening. And as long as it's predictable, it works. And it's extremely exciting to see the direction we're moving in.
I think so too, and I think that it's allowing for a lot more opportunity for these young adults to really learn from the previous generations, hardships in terms of career and combat this whole trend that traditional schooling is no longer viable and traditional career paths are no longer viable. We're not saying they're no longer viable. We're just changing the way that we view them. And we're changing the way that we utilize them. And so I think, for example, TikTok has really developed your career in a way that you probably never even predicted. And here you are, a YouTuber, right? We were just talking about, like, Gen Z wants to be a YouTuber and Madeline Mann's a YouTuber. And that's hilarious because you were in, the corporate life for so long. So I think it's a really cool trend. And, I think that your value to young adults and millennials in terms of how to be able to transition into a career that works best for them is so valuable and so awesome. And I value your information constantly. I've thoroughly enjoyed being able to follow your life and follow your insight. So thank you so much for coming on, and tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yes. So check me out, Self Made Millennial, on YouTube, TikTok, and come to my website, madelineman.com. I have lots of free resources there, lots of downloads, follow up emails, templates on how to answer the question, tell me about yourself, and resume masterclasses, all of that. So, yeah, just check me out over there.